3 months after my retirement party, I was quietly updating my resume. Not because I was broke, because I was disappearing. That's a version of a story I've heard 100 times. And almost nobody tells you it's coming. You've been sold one idea your entire working life. Grind until 65, flip the switch, and coast off into the sunset. The finish line. The reward you earned. Here's the truth no one says out loud. There is no switch. And the people who sprint the hardest at that imaginary finish line are often the ones who fall the furthest past it. The wealthiest, healthiest, most content people in their 60s didn't actually stop working. They stopped working the way they were told to and quietly redesigned it on their own terms. There are 6 truths about working in your 60s that nobody prepares you for. The last one changes what this whole thing was ever really about. And one of them is the entire difference between a cliff and a bridge. The first truth is the one your entire plan is quietly built on. And it isn't true. The idea of the clean stop. One day you're working, the next you leap off the edge at 65 into pure, endless leisure. The hard cliff. Here's what nobody warns you about that leap. Human beings are not wired for a sudden full stop. For 40 years, your work handed you things you never even noticed it was giving you. A reason to think hard, a structure to your day, people, a sense of being useful. Take all of that away in a single afternoon, and the mind and body notice fast. Researchers keep finding the same uncomfortable pattern. Abruptly retiring into nothing lines up with sharper cognitive decline and higher rates of depression than easing out slowly. That was David. The day the work stopped, he went from 100 miles an hour straight to zero. Pure golf, pure television, pure rest. And within a year, the sharp, quick man his family knew had started to dull. Bored, restless, older somehow. You're probably thinking you've earned the right to do absolutely nothing. You have. The trap isn't rest, it's the cliff. It's going from 100 to zero overnight, with nothing on the other side to catch you. The move. Don't leap. Build a bridge. Phase down. Go part-time. Keep one foot in something that uses your mind. On a glide path instead of a cliff edge. Susan didn't jump. She stepped down slowly, kept a small piece of work she chose, and crossed into retirement instead of falling into it. Same age. One of them landed, one of them fell. And whether you even get to choose how you leave is the second truth. The one that steals the decision right out of your hands. Here's the truth almost no plan accounts for. You may not be the one who decides when you stop. Everyone builds the plan the same way. I'll work until 67, then step back on my terms. It's a lovely plan. It also assumes the choice stays yours. It often doesn't. Nearly half of retirees, about 46%, end up leaving earlier than they planned. And for most of them, it wasn't their call. A layoff at 61, a health scare, a parent or spouse who suddenly needs care, and the quiet one nobody says out loud, age. The market that fought to hire you at 40 stops returning your calls at 62. That's how it happened to David. He planned to work until 67. At 61, his job was cut. He sent out 60 applications and got 3 callbacks. Forced out years early, he did the only thing left. Claimed everything early and locked in a smaller life for good. You might be thinking that won't happen to you. You're good at your job. So was David. Being good at your job has never once stopped a company from deciding you cost too much. The move. Never assume you control the timing. Build the exit before you need it. Keep your skills current. Keep a network warm. Keep a bridge income you could switch on inside a month, not a year. Optionality is the whole game. Susan built that plan B long before she needed it. So when the shove came for her too, it was a step down, not a free fall. Which brings us to the truth that turns all of this from a threat into a genuine advantage. Here's the truth that should change how you see the next few years entirely. The single most powerful money move left to you in your 60s isn't an investment. It's a year. One more year of earning does 3 enormous things at exactly the same time. Watch them stack. It's one more year of money going in instead of coming out. It's one fewer year your savings have to stretch across. And if you delay Social Security, it's roughly 8% more on that check. On a $2,000 benefit, That's an extra $160 a month for the rest of your life. Stack those three, and a single extra year can move a plan from "this might run out" to "this will hold" more powerfully than any fund you could ever pick. A few more years of even light part-time work can be worth more than the entire last decade of frantic saving. You're probably thinking you're far too burned out to grind one more year. And you'd be right. If it had to be the same job, the same hours, the same everything, it doesn't. This isn't one more year on the treadmill. It's a few years on a path you actually choose. The move? Trade the hard cliff for 2 or 3 years of lighter chosen work. Not because you have to prove anything, because the math quietly compounds in your favor every single month you stay in the game on your own terms. David had always seen work as the thing to escape, so when it was taken from him early, he'd built nothing to catch him and spent the next 20 years watching the numbers get tight. Susan saw those same years as leverage, used everyone she could, and never once worried about running out. But money is not actually why the healthiest people keep working. And the real reason is the fourth truth. Ask the sharpest, most alive people in their 70s why they still work, and money is almost never the first thing out of their mouth. Because a job was quietly meeting 3 human needs you can't buy on Amazon. Psychologists who study what actually makes people thrive keep landing on the same 3. The freedom to make your own calls, the feeling of being good at something, and belonging to a group that needs you there. Autonomy, mastery, connection. For 40 years, work handed you all 3 without you ever noticing. Then retirement takes the paycheck away and quietly takes those 3 with it. That's the part nobody budgets for. That's the hollow David couldn't name. When the work went, the paycheck went with it. But so did the 3 things it had been quietly carrying all along. A man with nothing left that needed him. You might be thinking hobbies and grandkids will fill that space. Sometimes they do, but a hobby rarely makes you feel genuinely needed. Golf doesn't call you on a Tuesday because only you can solve something. The deep version of purpose usually comes from being counted on. The move, whatever you build for your 60s, make sure it hands back those same 3. A say in your day, a skill you're sharpening, and people who are glad you showed up. That's not a career tip. That's a health prescription. Susan didn't keep working for the check. She kept the 3 things the check was always hiding and stayed sharp because of it. And that raises the hardest truth of all. Because the world may not hand those 3 things back to you the way it used to. Here's the truth that stings a little. The market may not want the old you. The instinct is to get rehired into the world you just left. Same field, same kind of role, 1 rung down. And for a lot of people over 60, that door is quietly closing. Not because you got worse, but because of a bias nobody will admit to your face. So the ones who thrive stop knocking on that door. They build a different one. They take 30 years of hard-won judgment and turn it into something smaller that they own. Consulting a few days a month, teaching what they mastered, advising the version of themselves from 20 years ago, turning experience into a business of 1 on their own schedule. Older workers are the most likely of any age group to be working for themselves, and more of them are choosing it by design, not out of desperation. David never made that turn. He kept applying for the job he used to have, kept hearing no, and eventually just stopped trying. He read the rejection as, "I'm finished." It actually meant, "that door is finished." Different sentence entirely. You might be thinking nobody would pay you to go out on your own. Someone, somewhere, is right now struggling with a problem you solved 100 times before lunch. Your experience isn't out of date. It's inventory. The move. Stop trying to be rehired into the old world. Build a smaller one you own. Your decades of experience are the one asset your younger competition simply cannot fake. Susan did exactly that. She turned a career into a practice of 1, chose her own clients, set her own hours, and answered to no one. David was unemployed. Susan was independent. Same skills, 2 completely different words. Which finally brings us to the 6th truth, the one that quietly changes what this whole thing was ever about. Remember the man from the very beginning? Updating his resume 3 months after his own retirement party? Not because he was broke, but because he was disappearing. Here is what he finally understood, and what almost no one tells you. The goal was never to stop working. Read the 5 truths back, the cliff that breaks people. The exit you don't control, the extra year that saves you, the purpose the paycheck was hiding, the reinvention nobody prepares you for. Every single one points in the same direction, and it isn't quit. The dream you were sold aimed at the wrong target. Stop working was never the real prize. The real prize was this: to stop working for people who don't value you, on a schedule you never chose, for money you no longer even need. That's not retiring from work. That's retiring into work you finally own. David chased stop. He hit it dead center and disappeared behind it. Susan chased control. At 70, she is sharper, richer, and more alive than she was at 50, not despite still working, but because of the kind she chose. Freedom in your 60s was never the absence of work. It's finally becoming the author of it. That's the terror hiding in that man's voice at the start. Not that he had to work again, that he spent his whole life aiming at stop and never once aimed at mine. Here's the reframe that changes everything. The right work in your 60s isn't the failure of your retirement plan, it is the plan. This week, stop asking the old question, when can I finally stop? Ask the real one instead. What would I still do if the money no longer mattered? And how do I start building the bridge to it now, while I still hold every card? Update the resume for the life you actually want, not the one you're trying to escape. Keep one foot in something that needs you. Turn the experience you're sitting on into something that's yours. Because everyone around you is still sprinting toward a cliff, certain that the leap is the reward. You know better now. The leap was never the prize, the bridge was. Build it, and walk across it on your own 2 feet into work that finally belongs to you. I'll see you in the next one.